different generations. It's been very exciting. I can feel the heat that Anneke brought up in the beginning. And now we can maybe start cooking a bit more, trying to funnel this more into ideas for the future. So what's next? What are steps that we can take? But before we go into that, we want to use this round to pause for a second and to really dig deeper into this idea of mistakes. So a lot of you have had experiences here, either coming from outside or working from within with foreign offices, and we would love to hear from you what you've experienced, what went well, but also what didn't go that well, and what did you learn from that, and what can we take away from that. And we have, again, I think a very impressive lineup of guests. We're going to repeat the rhythm of the different formats. Hopefully the technique will not fail this time. So we're going to do this together, and this is really a moment where we hopefully can truly open up, as the Prime Minister was saying at the very beginning, where we can let go of our egos. And there's a lot of reverb, no?
It's a motor, I think.
Oh, it's the motor, okay. I thought it was my voice. Yeah, to really start unpacking what is going on here and what your personal experience has been. Yeah, so bear with us. I'm going to give it to René.
Right, so we're going to dive right into the next encounter with Alejandro Aravena and Anupama Kundoo. If you could please make your way forward to the stage, then we start the conversation. Yeah, give them a warm applause. Yeah, have a seat. So thank you so much for joining. And so I think it would be very interesting indeed to delve also into this notion of the mistake and what we can learn from mistakes. But maybe to start, I think, to briefly introduce both of you. Alejandro Aravena, Chilean architect, head of Elemental, focusing on issues around housing and inequality. Also currently here in Tirana working on the Tirana Society Towers. And Anupama Kundoo, do I pronounce that right? Yeah, that's great. Architect from India, wide range of really beautiful locally embedded projects, and also currently here in Albania working on various projects. Maybe to start the conversation, we had a little pre-chat yesterday night, which was very pleasurable. And I think what both of you immediately brought up was this recognition is that there is a lot of architects from the global north, and you both identified with the peripheral condition that is maybe also something that you experience here in Albania. And I was wondering if you can maybe expand on that and explain a little bit what you meant with that. Would you like to start? Yeah.
Okay. First of all...
We have another mic, sorry. Yeah.
First of all, faleminderit. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister, and all the people of Albania for your hospitality. I want to respond to your question by really putting the stress on, oh my God, it's much louder. I would like to put the stress on recognizing that there are two essential types of mistakes and failures. One type of mistake is the new mistake. That is the indicator that you tried something new, that you experimented. I mean, humanity is here to evolve, right? So if you don't experiment, the fear of failure could be quite dangerous. So the other kind of mistake is to not learn from the mistake and to repeat the mistake again and again till you become numb. You think the failure is so normalized by repetition, so like a sheep you keep on walking the beaten track. So I think the essence lies in recognizing these two, and I would like to say that the most dangerous thing, the extreme waste of time and the opportunity of our life is to not to be driven by the fear of failure.
Wow, yeah, that's really amazing. Would you like to respond to that as well?
Yes, thank you. So I know we have very limited time, and originally I wanted to share 3 stories. The Alanis Morissette case, then the Emperor's Clothes at Harvard, and then living in the colonies of the empire. But I will take one out, Harvard, and let me focus. I will try to be as fast as possible sharing one story and then connect it to maybe a reflection on the situation here, and mainly to the Albanian architects and also to the Albanian investors. So let me start with Alanis Morissette, and that means the song Thank You, where she in principle thanks to things that you try to avoid and how you extract knowledge from that. It goes back to 97, actually 95, when I had to quit architecture out of disillusionment. I felt I've studied architecture and there was a very rich body of knowledge, and then the clients I was working for were so bad that I felt it was not right for the profession to keep on working like that, and for doing bullshit, I preferred to quit. So I opened a bar. And I had to leave at night, and all the people working in the bar, none of them had finished high school. Yet, we were in a tough neighborhood, and sometimes we had to defend ourselves, close the doors, because there were people coming, trying to rob the clients. So we have to be trapped in the bar. And the feeling not of community, but of a tribe of people that had street wisdom. Who would have thought that in an environment of people that had almost no education, there was a knowledge that was fundamental for them being able to speak in our social housing projects to people that also had the street wisdom. So let me stop that story over there and then jump now to a recent thing that happened to me maybe a couple of weeks ago. Talking to a former Minister of Housing of Chile, she said that in between the census in Chile, 2/3 of the square meters in the country did not even ask for a building permission. We thought that in Latin America, Chile was a place where we follow the rules and that we were driving far. Yet, the majority of the square meters were informal. If I connect this to education, we're desperately in Chile all the time trying to get these accreditations from the US universities, from the European universities of the RIBA, and somehow we're there in the corner of the world, in the last row of the cultural production. The center of the empire is somewhere there. We're far away in the colonies, in the last row. But when you realize that the majority of the world does not work the way it works in the center of the empire. The majority is like what is in the colonies. Instead of being in the last row, we're in the front row of having to work in an environment where you have to improvise, you have to move ahead with not a lot of certainties, you have to use your street wisdom. So that being said, I would say that when coming to Albania, what you find here is not just, an opportunity to build, which is there, you can't deny that. But when coming here, what I find floating in the air is there's a lot of street wisdom. So I go back to Chile with a way around of people that instead of talking, they do. And this is a fantastic thing. And going back to the question of accreditation, shouldn't it be the other way around? Instead of us asking for accreditation in our architecture schools in the center of the empire, we're in the front row to the majority of the planet. We should do the accreditations to Europe, to the US, or to the RIBA, maybe the same way Albania, it's not Chile entered the OECD, and we're proud of being this club, but we're always having the worst indicators in that club. Maybe we have to invent our own league and reverse around, turn around and be in the front row. Might be that Albania is in the front row or something instead of being the last one in the European community.
Yeah, amazing. And how do you think, how can you learn from the mistakes that are being made currently also in Albania? How can you learn from the street wisdom? And not just your own street wisdom or your own mistakes, but also the street wisdom and the mistakes from others. How does that learning work, do you think?
I honestly could answer many things, but I don't think there is a formula. You just have to, when you want to create new thing, you have to create the road on which you are going to walk. So you just have to remain alive and humble to recognize that we are part of, you have to choose adventure over security. That's what I would say.
Adventure over security, yeah. What do you think? How do you learn from the street wisdom?
When the chances to fail are very high, you put all your efforts in guaranteeing success, maybe in just one move. Think about this building. When the structure is finished, the architecture is finished. So we tend to work and try to secure the structure. That is what will last. So when you use knowledge to have the structure finished, now translating all this in an architectural operation, make sure, young architects, architecture students, that focus your emphasis, your priorities in the structure. That's not necessarily the case in contemporary architecture. If we can get the structure right, we have more chances that if failure happens, it's not really, it's not going to make things collapse.
It will survive failure and evolve into something else. Yeah.
But I would like to add that there are a couple of common failures we should all be aware of that we should not allow to bring here. And I think these are the way, commodification of architecture has been normalized, where land is being looked at too closely with ownership.
To dominate the land.
So
as
to come back to non-ownership approach to every resource, land, water, create water wealth, and that's the part I really don't want to see repeat here in Albania, because Albania is a fertile ground, literally and figuratively. And the biggest mistake would be to create a depletion model for water, for energy, for everything.
Yeah, of these natural resources that are already here and that we need in the
abundance
future.
Model.
Exactly, yeah. And I also wondered, it's like both of you are also known for very humble and collective and locally embedded projects in the places where you're from. And then you're coming to Tirana, where there's also quite a lot of, let's say, dare I say, bold architecture being imposed on the territory. How do you relate to that? And do you think that you can also bring some of, let's say, the embedded knowledge from the places you've been working in? Can you bring that to Albania and to Tirana, you think?
I don't think anything is imposed. Everything is a choice. We have not to feel like a victimhood. Everything is chosen so that we don't need to blame anyone else. We can take responsibility. And I would like to say, what is there to bring? We are all Homo sapiens. We are more common than different. We have the same law of gravity. We have the same, we are the same body, adjust to different climate. And all our ancestors have already shown us how to coexist with each other and with the world at large. And I think our knowledge and wisdom is universal, but the application is always local.
Yeah, of course, but you can't deny that there is a certain kind of architecture that is emerging that is quite dominant currently also in Tirana, that is in a way maybe also different from many of the projects that you've been doing. I was just wondering, how can you bring some of the quality that you have realized in many of your work, how can you transfer that to a different context?
I can bring it in my project, and we are a part of a large collective, and everybody will bring that aspect of their research, and together it will add up.
Okay, well, I wonder, how is that for you, Alejandro?
Well, maybe I wouldn't say that the architecture we do, especially in social housing, it's either humble or modest. It has to be rather strong. I mean, the only difference is that you're starting something and then letting it go. But in order to have a clear start, what you have to do has to be very bold. So it's maybe counterintuitive, but in order to allow other forces to move in, then your initial start has to be as clear as possible. Think about what Frick said about this 5 cores on the edges, because it may be a hotel today, it might be an office tomorrow, but the point is once you start and ignite the thing, then it can have a life on its own. So while dealing with housing, I would say it's pretty much the same thing. It starts from facts. It's a fact that half of the square meters in the world are not built by architects, are built by people themselves. That's a very big force. Instead of fighting or resisting or replacing that force, channel it through architecture. So if you understand architecture as channeling big forces, your role as a designer is completely different. But it requires clear, bold moves, and it goes back to structure.
Yeah, personally, I'm not fully aware of the entire spatial conditions in Albania, but I understood there's also quite some informal conditions here. Is that something that you could also bring, this knowledge on how do you do not resist the informal, but work with it and expand it and let it flourish? Is that something you could bring to Albania also?
I would say that it's also important to start from looking at the situation without any bias, without any cliches. Let's look at what is the situation and only then understand what you have to do. Normally, we as architects want too soon. We already have an idea and want to use a client as an excuse to bring forward your creative agenda. Instead of doing that, postpone wanting, listen to what are the requests and the questions you are being asked, understand the means, understand the constraints, and only then want something. If you're operating that way, it's very likely that the forces are on your side instead of being against you.
I would also like to remind all of us, our community of architects, that actually it would be nice to zoom out a little bit in time and in space, and to have a look that, in the times of colonization, we had begun to move materials kilometers from one place to another in order to do habitat, which all the animals and humans have built literally with whatever's lying around. If you have ice, you build with ice. If you have earth, you build with earth. And we have come very far from that. And I would hope that we would at least do some research in the materiality, in the local materiality, so that this large export of long supply chains can be restricted to add to the local economy and skills and knowledge of the people, and to make the architecture here people-centric, not only in the process, but also in the knowledge development.
Yeah, wonderful.
I think on that note, we're going to end because we have to move on. But thank you so much. What I'm taking away from this is to tap into the collective wisdom of the people living on the ground from you. And also this distinction between the two types of failure I find super relevant for today. Like the first mistake is valid because it's experimentation, but how do we avoid repeating certain mistakes? Maybe this is something that we can carry with us as we enter the next panels. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And over to Mark and Katja.
Thank you so much. And now we move on to another series of short inputs. I would like to invite Amanda Levete, Emre Arolat, and Andrea Caputo to come forward. We were also supposed to have Marco Casamonti present, but he missed his flight, so we'll have to wait for another occasion for that to happen. Please take a seat. There is a clicker, yes. So first, I would like to give the floor to Amanda Levete, who is the founder of ALA and winner of the Sterling Prize. She has several projects underway in Albania, so we'd like to hear from you about your lessons learned so far.
Thank you. And I've taken my shoes off because that's what we do in my office, and it's a great leveler, and it kind of relaxes me.
Maybe you can put the mic close so everyone can hear you.
We've only been working in Albania for a short time, just 6 months. So I'm going to start with a lesson learned a few years ago. And that was at the V&A, where we designed the world's first porcelain courtyard to reflect the museum's founding ethos of using the marriage between artisans, craftsmanship, and industry to improve British design. And these 4 images kind of tell that story. We did extensive research to find the right maker because we were asking them to explore the unknown. And after a long time of trial and error and experimentation, the porcelain tiles were cast, and then we had the laborious process of getting them tested to comply with EU regulations. But we were so emboldened by our success that we thought we'd take it one step further, and that we would extrude porcelain through this specifically designed die. But there is a reason that you don't extrude porcelain, and that is because it doesn't work. So the lesson that we learned at the V&A was don't push it too far. Instead, push the conceptual, because the power of the idea is everything. Technical innovation is exciting, it's important, but it does not make the difference to the success of a project. The strength of a clear idea is what makes the difference. And that is our focus here. And wherever possible, we are using traditional materials and traditional construction techniques to support that narrative and reflect the character of Albania. When we started working here, I simply could not believe the timescales we were being asked to work to. And we're still figuring it out. So we are learning to adapt to Albania's fast and somewhat impatient energy, and to focus on what truly matters and what really will make a difference. At times it's exhilarating, and at others it is utterly exhausting. But as we become more confident working here, we're also learning to say no when the timescales are clearly unrealistic, or we simply need more time to get it right. The work ethic here is something I have never experienced. No other country would be crazy enough to organize an architecture festival in such a short time. Adelina and Ada, you have literally turned 6 months into 6 weeks, and we have so much that we want to learn from you. Always do what you think is right. If you think the density demanded by the brief is too much, challenge it. If you think the limits on the number of floors are too high, challenge it. Push back when compromises threaten the integrity of a project. Now, perhaps it's easier for us arriving as outsiders to challenge these things. But when we do, our local architects invariably agree with us. So my message to you is, have confidence in what you believe is right for your city and for your country. And not only that, we are becoming more confident in proposing only what's right, and we are being encouraged to do so by Eddie Rama and his team. Now, not only is that radical, but it is a very smart way of getting international architects to support and set up the standards for the future. Now, you have a very different way of working here. It is almost impossible to plan a schedule in advance. Meetings are arranged at the last minute by WhatsApp, messages disappear. You seduce us with your generosity and your hospitality. And the most meaningful conversations and decisions happen over a drink or they happen over dinner. And strong relationships and friendships between investors, between local architects and international architects is what is going to make projects a success. And it is essential to do that. And we are learning to let go and go with the flow. But perhaps there are things that you can also learn from us. And I'm hoping that tomorrow we can have a conversation about how international practices can help make the Albanian architectural sector international in its reputation. So in the meantime, pass the rakia, and thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Amanda. I would like to, I just did pass the mic to Emre Arolat, who is the founder of Istanbul-based EAA and has been working in, I think, mainly Albania's southern Riviera. Mr. Arolat, the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks a lot. It's kind of a bridge between we can do all and take it or leave it. I mean, it's not very easy to describe all the challenges, all the mistakes. If I will talk about my mistakes here, you should be staying here all night. I mean, it's not easy. Can we go to this first slides, please? Yes. Okay, these are some projects that we are doing in Albania since 6 years now. These are all in the shoreline, in the very beautiful coastline of this very unique country. Some of them are under construction, some of them are still in the design phases, and some of them are on hold for the moment. But to put it briefly, and it can stay a bit more, and let's say briefly and broadly, in all of these projects we aim to explore once again what is the meaning of being Mediterranean, let's say its distinctive characters, qualities and identities, by designing within a, let's say, cultural framework, contextual framework, but also delivering some innovative and, let's say, solutions that meet today's demands as well. What we focus on really are the careful and original, let's say, relationships with, I mean, crafted with topography, with natural fabric, and the emphasis of human scale, the fragmentation somehow, which are all Mediterranean habits in my opinion, and various aspects learned from the existing local texture, existing local architecture, but always through a kind of abstraction. Of course, the lessons we have learned here in this unique geography, these are clearly more diverse than, of course, we have drawn from local architecture. But with so little time, I'll just cover some of them, just a small part of it. This project, for example, is located in the area where we can call Albanian Riviera easily. And it's one of those cases where we made many mistakes before learning lessons in certain aspects. I mean, in the landscape design, for example, of this project, that we worked with our dear friend, dear colleague, Gustus Helhorst. And to preserve the natural fabric, as you can see, we did a very meticulous work. I mean, there are hundreds of pages like that at the left-hand side of this page, producing highly detailed designs, as you can see on the left, like how can we protect the original texture, how we can protect the original maquis in between houses and everything, how we can take the soil away, some excavation techniques and things like that. In fact, what we focused on, and believe me, we did I mean, we tried every possible way to communicate to construction teams, and our aim was very simple, and I think very understandable also, and highly rational at the same time. It was a rational concern that would be extremely beneficial for the investors in the long run. But on the right side, you see an aerial photo of a part of the project currently under construction, and the ground cover is completely gone, and unfortunately it will take years. I'm sure that it will take years to the greenery to come back, but I'm sure that the investors will do everything they can in this manner. Actually, we can pass one. Next, please. Actually, we learned these lessons years ago. I'm coming from Turkey, from Istanbul. I'm doing architecture nearly since 40 years. And years ago, we took those lessons in Turkey, in the southern part of Turkey. We managed somehow to achieve a successful results in terms of preservation of landscape. The photos on the left, if you can go there, I mean, okay, this is another one. If you can go back, I'm sorry about that. Oh, one is missing, I guess. Okay, no problem. Another one? No. Okay, let's go back. There was another, the fifth one, which was showing an example from Turkey and another example from Albania. But it's okay. Let's continue from here. This is another project that we got a lesson, which is also in the same area. Actually, this experience showed us that here in this geography, I don't agree with some of the speakers right now. It's better not to push too much the materials, I mean too far, because you can still get good results with very simple materials, with very simple details as well. And in the early phase of this project, for example, which includes some social and recreational spaces along with F&B units, most of the materials that we suggested were rejected and changed by the construction team. I mean, and you don't understand when it's rejected and when it's changed, because you see a mock-up with the real material, and you go back to the site and you see a very different thing in one day. So, but I think we still managed to keep the atmosphere even with very, I mean, much simpler materials. And next, please. Yeah, that, I mean, you see the night photo below on the bottom center. It's pretty cool, right? I mean, I like it. But actually in the original design, where you now see those paddle courts up on the terrace, there was a very quiet, very nice green terrace, green area, green roof. Well, this project has now become a place that is fully embraced by people, by actively used by the local community. And in the circumstances, I guess the only thing left for us to do is to watch, to try to understand a bit more, to reflect and keep learning, because you learn from people, you learn from this beautiful people of Albania. And putting our egos away a bit, we can have some balances between the needs, the necessities, and the abilities. Many thanks to those people of this beautiful country for all these lessons, and thanks for you to listen to me.
Thank you, Emre. And yeah, this plea to keep learning will continue. And I think it's also interesting that we also, that you're bringing all your knowledge of many of the speakers today from different territories where we already made mistakes, and we can learn and bring that knowledge as well. Andrea Caputo, I would like to introduce you. Andrea is founder of Studio Caputo and has won a competition last year. And you're working on the mixed-use building of Tirana Void. Can I give the floor to you?
Thank you, and hi everyone. Yeah, like others, my experience in this country is quite recent. I basically started last year, and so there's a lot to learn and many mistakes yet to come. But possibly this learning process is also related to my personal experience. I'm based in Milano since 20 years, but I come from the coastline, the Costa Adriatica, and so in a landscape, in a territory which has several connection points with Albania, I would say, and in an area which has been compromised. No, this morning we discussed about mistakes that in Europe, from Spain to France, Italy, we committed on the coastline overbuilding. No, I was not a witness of the post-war economical boom, but in a very tangible way, I was there, I grew up there, and so I clearly remember all these mistakes. And somehow those are quite predictable today, no? So they are there, and so maybe we know what not to do. But at the same time, we were all shocked by all the unexpected. And in 1989, the imaginary of the sea disappeared. We had a sea water pandemic, and basically the Adriatic coast from Rimini to the south got completely compromised. And the whole traffic, the whole economy related to tourism, the collapse. We all thought it was occasional, but then we realized that it was something coming back every year. And of course, the region reacted with an alternative new strategy, which was pretty much related to entertainment. So the majority of water parks got built in the coastline, which is a paradox. No, they were all these constructions facing the sea, but based on water entertainment. And also the nightlife became an opportunity. So the clubbing, the movement was really strong. Today we all know, and we all go Ibiza, but back then it was actually Rimini. And today there's DC-10, Circo Loco, but back then it was a Cocorico, which was much better. And so this was a completely change in the perception of our territory from still related to tourism, but in a different form. And we all knew that it was something not lasting long. In fact, it didn't work. The tourism, as we used to know it, it never came back. And the major problem, it's architectural. So basically there's a monofunctional building in 100 kilometers of coast dominating the landscape, which is the hotel box. It's a generic hotel box, impossible to hijack, impossible to, let's say, implement with new functions. But even the colonial buildings from Mussolini are still abandoned today because it's impossible to approach. I mean, there's no other way to, let's say, define other programs. And I think this could be a great lesson to learn today in terms of typology, functionality, in the way we approach the circulations, in the way we approach the ground floor, which has never been porous in that area. There was always a fence, if not a wall, around the building. And on the contrary, I think today, at least what I'm committed to do is to approach and to learn from that in a moment that we have to think that a plan B is always around the corner. So just to conclude, my contribution today is a visual one. I think early this year I commissioned Marco Cappelletti, a photographer from Italy, to shoot the territory of Albania, our plots, our sites, and also maybe to, let's say, keep doing it in the next month, in next years, in order to document this transformation and to develop a sense of responsibility that we all have in this kind of condition. And yeah, I think that's the approach we have right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe also, I think it also really speaks to the forgetfulness that was mentioned earlier today by the Prime Minister. So I think you brought a beautiful tool to, keep remembering.
I have a question for, I think maybe for Emre and Andrea both. Amanda, sorry. Because I think if I heard it correctly, you said something like, "Don't push the materiality too far." It's like you have to make it buildable somehow, or relate to the local vernacular. And then Amanda, I think you were saying we should help the construction industry develop somehow. So maybe I thought maybe you could have a bit of an exchange on that.
Yeah, so I'm really kind of pushing the conceptual, really pushing the narrative, spending the time, the investment in really thinking about what it is that's going to drive the project, what it is in the locality that is going to make it so special. And that technical innovation in materials, which is quite rare anyway and takes a long time, isn't the thing that's going to make the difference. So why not work with the natural resources here, the most incredible colored stones? You know, why not work with simple construction techniques, as you were saying, to create beautiful structures? It isn't always necessary to push the material innovation, because it doesn't, in the end, make that much difference to a project. It's the thinking that makes the difference.
Yeah, maybe one more thing that I can add. I mean, I believe that every single project is another tabula rasa, and then you have to think from the 0 point, and you have to learn all the necessities, all the distinctive and specific situations of this project, and you decide what to do. So it's a learning process as well. And somehow, if you learn that it's not possible to push the boundaries of materialization, in that case, we don't need to do that. I mean, it's nonsense, in my opinion. So there are lot to talk about that. I'm coming from a country which has seen lots of different situations, including today's catastrophic situation. But I can say that 20 years ago in Turkey, we were pushing the boundaries of materialization. Now we are pushing the boundaries of other things. But here in Albania, this is the moment for all nice things to push. But this is not only materialization, this is not only sustainability, this is not only growing the country with tourism, this is not, I mean, this is a package of beautiful things. So, in my opinion, as an architect, we have the responsibility to think about every single situation as a white page.
Yeah, it also makes me think about OMA's project, Mangalem 21, for which they chose to work with a radically local construction method in order to also generate this affordability, which really results in a kind of a very community inhabited housing complex. But then again, you could also say maybe we should push a way forward to more, let's say, carbon neutral materials. So what do you think about this tension?
Okay, if you have this opportunity, if you feel that you have this opportunity within this specific case, of course you should do 100%. But if you don't, I mean, it's nonsense. It's very simple in my opinion.
Making the building as carbon neutral as possible, of course, has to be an ambition, and it's an imperative for all of us to think about. But we also have to be pragmatic sometimes, and pragmatism has its value. And for example, if we, in what we're doing here, we're using a lot of stone, but let's use stone offcuts. Let's not quarry more than we need to. Let's use what is already left over and find a way of applying it and making it rich and textural and beautiful.
Just very small thing to add. I mean, it depends on the project's sense as well. If it's a public project, it's much easier to do this. But if it's a private project, the conditions are really different. For example, yesterday evening's structure that we saw in the Prime Minister office, it's a beauty, it's jewelry, but you cannot do that everywhere.
Yeah, it's a precedent that can't really be repeated all around yet.
Maybe coming back to the question of mistakes, I think all of you address the question of time and the time that is needed in many ways, whether it's witnessing the transformations that are happening or, you mentioned the importance to also say no when more time is needed. I wondered if this is something that, it is also a way to maybe prevent mistakes from happening, or at least to take the time to think ahead. So how do you, also Andrea and Emre and Amanda, how do you respond to that?
We've only been here 6 months, but as we become more confident, then you can begin to challenge more. And I have to say, when we have challenged our investors, maybe at the beginning they're really annoyed and we're not producing it quick enough. But actually, you take them along the journey. You explain that you need more time to make it beautiful. You explain that you need more time to make it affordable. And in every case, they have eventually been really supportive. So I think there are some fantastic investors out there. And I actually a little bit disagree with you that I think it's a very kind of European thing as well. Developers, investors, they always want a quick return on their money as cheap as possible. But actually, get to know them properly. Get to know what really matters to them. And why can't you push them as far as you can push a public institution?
And Andrea?
Well, I think it's also related to the kind of dialogue we build up with the client and with the developers. If it's a one-shot building, it's a condition. But if you manage to, let's say, continue the business, at least I see that there's a way to, there's more time to, let's say, let them understand that the process should be different in the deliverables, in the quality, And of course, you build confidence, but you also somehow manage every building better, because of course there's a process going with time and with the same people, So I guess it's especially for us coming from a country which is very near. It's almost an obligation to build up a relationship which goes beyond the practical, let's say, commitment that we have. At least I think this is building a dialogue. I think is one of the ways.
I want to thank you all so much, Emre, Amanda, and Andrea, for the short input sessions and your insights.
All right. I hope you're all enjoying yourself, learning a lot. Hope you're all comfortable. For the people still standing in the back, feel free to make your way forward to the main circle if you want to sit here on the stools or lay down on the carpet. All right, so it's time for some pepper. And for that, I would like to ask Irida Shupo to the front. Irida, where are you? Yeah, warm applause for Irida. Here you are, just behind me. And we have some technicalities being set up here. So Irida is architect and part of IRI architecture, but most importantly also part of Your Voice, Albanian young architects. And we're very curious to learn more about what that is. Yeah, give her a warm applause. Sorry. Are you ready, Irida? Yeah?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Hello everybody. It's actually a pleasure for me to be here among you, among the people who shape, challenge, and question the cities. In the next few meetings, I want to share something personal with you, a local perspective, a view from inside the process, from inside the city of Tirana. In just 3 decades, Tirana has changed dramatically. The territory expanded 25 times and the population grew from 200,000 to almost 1 million people. This growth happened both in the center and at the edges of the city, shaping completely new built environment. Today, Tirana is a mix of old and new. in architecture, in people, and in culture. And we often find ourselves balancing between two different sides. Preserve what is there and what is valuable, and the desire to shape this new reality. All of this unfolds under the weight of rapid urbanization. We are facing and trying to answer many questions at the same time, sometimes too many. This is the environment where we all work, and I want to share how this reality shapes our projects and our thinking. As a local architect, I'm part of Irida Architecture Studio, and it was founded in 2017 from a simple but strong need, a local studio that could connect international architects to the local context in a meaningful way. We bring local knowledge, and we understand how things work here, formally and sometimes informally. And sometimes we even become like cultural interpreters, translating not just language, but also expectations, values, and ways of working. Our team includes architects and engineers with international and local background, but we all work with the same focus: to help ambitious ideas become real here in Albania. We've worked on large-scale projects like the Skanderbeg Square, the Pyramid of Tirana, the Lungomare in Vlora, and many others. But no matter the scale, we always approach each project with a belief in building a dialogue. This way, we try to generate knowledge together and learn for each of the people involved. And in the end, the process shapes the results. Over the years, we had the chance to work with some of the most interesting architects, international ones, people whose work we knew and admired even before we even met them. And along the way, we've also met new voices, each one adding something different to the mix. Every collaboration is unique. But there is one thing that everybody requires, and that thing is quality. Some international partners already know this context very well. They are open, respectful of the culture and the rhythm. Others are new to this environment, and they are curious to explore this country and the possibilities that the country offers. So each collaboration is different, and it is not always easy, especially in complex projects when many stakeholders are involved. Sometimes the hardest part is just making sure that everyone is focused on the same thing at the same time. That is where we come in. We try to keep the balance between architects, developers, institutions, contractors. We support the process so that the idea doesn't get lost between the steps. But at the core, let's not forget that we are architects. And this is not just a job, but this is also a passion. And that brings me to one of the most important points I want to share with you today. Over the years, our engagement with the international architects has taken many forms. Sometimes this collaboration has been a real exchange of ideas. Other times, our international partners have needed to maintain full control over the project. And in that cases, we have stepped in as mediators. But this dynamic raises some real questions within the local architectural community. That's why I'm here today, not only as a professional, but also to speak about the young Albanian architects. What are they learning from all of this? How are these collaborators shaping the future of our profession here? Just outside the building, on that side, you'll find a small but meaningful space. There is this pavilion called Your Voice. This was made possible thanks to 51 and 4He, who gave us the space and the support, and also the incredible energy of the young architects working in different studios across Tirana. We came together, we talked, and we call ourselves for this occasion AYA, Albanian Young Architects. We developed a set of questions for architects, citizens, and the broader community. Our pavilion is not an exhibition, it is actually a conversation space, where we question about how to shape the cities, who gets to decide, and how do we work together. We care deeply about how architecture is done here, and we believe there should be more space for young voices, not just to be present, but to take part in the process. You will find a few boards with questions outside, and actually some of you have already been there, helping us shape this idea with your answers. We are trying to fill with your input 4 main categories: the vision of the city, the role of the citizens in shaping it, the alternatives we still haven't explored, and what young architects are really learning from these collaborations. This is an open invitation to all of the local architects, international architects, and everybody who took the effort to be here today. You can still add your thoughts or speak to one of us. You will recognize us by the t-shirts. And even if you are not an architect, but just someone who cares about the future. So I would like to end by simply saying that if you care about the future, speak up, get involved, because your voice might shape this territory too. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Irida. So I think that's a clear call to all of you. Make sure to visit the pavilion. It's over there in that corner. And make sure to leave your thoughts and remarks and engage with all the young Albanian architects. In the meanwhile, we're connecting again with Aimoina, who's outside. And we'll get another few Vox Pops. And let's see if the technicalities are working out. Hey, can you hear as well?
Hello, I can hear you very well.
That's great. Well, the floor is yours. And there you go.
Great. Welcome to our outdoor venue. It's actually very vibrant here, and it was very inspiring to hear your panel discussions as well as the very inspiring speech of Irida regarding Albanian young architects. And speaking of Albanian young architects, I'm here with Endre Kicaj, which is also a young Albanian architect engaged largely with both academia and design practice here in Albania. And I'd really love to learn, as an Albanian architect, what are some of the lessons you have learned since you started your practice, and perhaps maybe even failures, mistakes, challenges, barriers that you went through on the way, how that has evolved and impacted your design experience here.
Thank you, Iona. Well, the way I see it is that the biggest success of these collaborations with international practices is the reclaiming of the liminal and turning it into a civic space. And this coupled with this, let's say, bold permission to prototype has allowed small actors to experiment with micro-scale interventions. And I guess experimentation terrain is a good soil to seed future ideas. So my hope is that in the next years, Albania keeps mixing this audacity that is becoming part of architectural life with everyday life practices, and takes its time to really understand how living here and what living here means in order to keep its architecture both adventurous and at the same time its own image. That's, I'd say, the biggest impression it has left on me. I guess the biggest issue, as I see it, would be to have the appropriate time to be able to understand both these dialectics from international actors and from local entrepreneurs and landowners.
That's fascinating. And if you might stop at the moment, you mentioned liminal space. How do you find that liminal space as a dialogue between the international and local architects? And do you think maybe there needs to be some sort of reimagining that kind of dialogue process, or how has it been evolving in your process since the early days of your collaborations up to today?
Well, by the time that I started working on architectural practice, there were 2 projects going on and almost finished. It was Skanderbeg Square here in Tirana and Lungomare, the waterfront in Vlorë. Both of which took these spaces and turned them into, I guess, social hubs and spaces for social activities. While the main square was always the main square in Tirana and has its symbolic value as well as its own space, the waterfront in Vlora had these really liminal characteristics, as it was a space that just happened to be there without having any real urban or political abilities, and the intervention from for both these areas brought into attention what could be done with communication and interaction with the everyday life of citizens in which these projects were applied. So I guess still for me is the issue of taking the time to understand step by step how people live these spaces and to enhance that relationship by growing from the bottom of everyday of civic life to then the projects that become symbolic of this intervention.
Thank you, Andre. Okay, thank you for your space, and we give the floor back to the indoor venue.
Thank you, Imona. Thank you. Yeah, and keep bringing us these thought-provoking ideas and reflections. Looking forward to the next one. We're going to move on. We'll be meeting with the panel. We'll be talking further about the notion of failure and mistakes. And I would like to invite here in the circle Camilo, Rebelo, Olga, Bolshanina, Wilfried, Kuehn, Kersten, Geers, and Denada, Veizaj. Yes, enough stools. Yeah, you can figure out where you want to be. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, just pick a seat. So we will just quickly introduce you using your slides, and we will end with you. And you've prepared something that goes a bit deeper into your experience here. But we start with Camilo, sitting here on the right. An architect, of course, from Porto, who's also teaching, worked a lot on museums, private homes, and I think your work can be characterized about how you connect the buildings to the landscape and with the nature. I think that's really at the core of the work that you do. You just arrived in Albania. You shared some slides of your arrival here with this, I think, the movie by Andri Salah. Maybe we come back to the slides in a minute. Next to you, Olga Bolshanina, associate partner at Herzog de Meuron, the firm known for many projects around the world, including the Elb Philharmonie, for example, in Hamburg. I think we have a picture of that in a second. The Sun by Olafur Eliasson will be shown in Tate Modern, which I think most of us have visited, another iconic project by Herzog de Meuron. And you've been working around the world, and now you're also started working here on a tower, and I think we also have a few images showing that. Thanks for being with us. Kersten Geers, sitting here, one of the founders of Office, together with David van Severen, who is also around, based in Brussels, also active around the world. Most recently, or one of the projects that stood out for me in recent years was what you've been doing in Bahrain. And now you're also active here, working on various projects in and around Tirana. So thanks for joining us. And then last but not least, Wilfried Kuehn, partner at Kuehn Malvezzi in Berlin. You started working more on exhibitions and museums, but you're slowly expanding, and you're also now working here in Albania on several residential projects, as far as I understood. So I think, again, a great panel, but we wanted to start with you, Denada. You're associate professor here at the Polytechnical University in Albania, and you want to emphasize the importance of education, and you've prepared something, and then we'll come back to this idea of failure and how we can learn from it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, I would like to start with very few reflections and thoughts during this intensive day. I'd say it was a very fruitful first session. And I'm also glad that the second session starts with this idea of building up an analytical and critical perspective on what's happening. So from this point of view, I'd like to stress on this, I find this gathering important in this sense, as an effort for trying, as an plausible effort for trying to build up this critical perspective, even though it's also true that it's happening afterwards. Some of important decision-making are already done, so maybe a first reflection would be to start this kind of collaborative and bottom-up and participatory processes even during the decision-making phases. I honestly think that what's happening in the recent 4 to 5 years, especially in Tirana, is something that is challenging the city and the context in many dimensions. I think that aesthetically is a gesture that is bringing an important contribution in the emancipation in the way we approach design. Somehow we are celebrating the power of design. We are celebrating architecture as an important gesture in the way we approach the city. But I think that a second reflection would be to expand a little bit the debate beyond the architectural scale and to see how this how this development moment is going to relate to the rest of the city. So from this point of view, this important moment is also bringing back with it important and addressing important challenges. However, I would like to stick on the idea of building up this critical perspective and to talk a little bit about the role of universities and academic environment in this, as long as I present universities here, and as a person that is being enrolled for more than 10 years in academia. It's true that we are experiencing our own challenges. We inherit an educational system that is rooted in a typical Eastern European model of educating architects, and we were producing architects that did answer to quite different challenges in the past decades. So we are trying to slowly, introduce a new model of education in architecture, and we are inviting students to approach architecture not as a finality per se, but as an instrument, as a tool that helps society to answer to different challenges. So in this perspective, I think that the role of academia is important, and this is also critical to us. We need to coordinate, and we need to make possible to coordinate agendas and somehow to share what we do within our auditoriums, and to help as well, to contribute in these collaborative processes. We talk about sustainability, we talk about critical regionalism, we talk about the risks of globalization, so I think we have a lot to share in this perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. Could you maybe quickly say something about what we've been seeing until now?
Oh, okay. So this is an example of what we do. This is 3D model, abstract 3D model of Tirana. This is work done with the students of the first year. We invite the students to analyze the city, to identify a typical urban phenomenon, and to translate that in abstract language by using abstract elements. This is an artistic way of approaching the city, and an analytical way to decode the urban environment. These are some paintings. I recently I'm exploring painting, and here, this is what I see from my office at the Polytechnic University of Tirana. And somehow I wanted to, bring the tension that is created within the existing city, something that we inherited from the Italian neo-rationalism, which has a different character, and what is going on right now with this entity of building that perform individually, and somehow are creating this kind of tension with what is already there.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think maybe we can, definitely. I think I want to ask you, Olga, about the role of education or learning, because I know you have some ideas on that. But maybe before we go there, I want to ask you first, from this critical capacity that you're developing with your students within academia, looking at what's happening in Tirana and elsewhere, what is the most commonly made mistake that you see that maybe the others here that are surrounding you can learn from before they start engaging or go deeper into their projects?
Well, perhaps it's about time. Everything is happening so fast, and we kind of lack time for, analyzing. I think that we should give time to the city to absorb, to digest all this intensity of development in both material, but also in other dimensions, like economically, culturally, socially even. So I think it's about time. We need time to process what's happening.
Yeah, recurring topic. Olga, I watched the film that was made by Anneke Abelak that is shown at the Venice Biennale that also features you, where you talk about this need to learn, like mutual learning between local practitioners, academics and the foreign offices coming here. Maybe to come back to the point of time, is there enough time also to learn the lessons and learn from the mistakes that were made before?
Well, learning, it's a dynamic process. I don't know if we ever can have enough time, but we always adapt to what
Can you talk into the mic?
Yeah?
Yeah.
Better? Very close. Okay. So, whether we have enough time, I don't know. And learning, it's a dynamic process. I think we never have enough time for anything, but education is absolutely central in a foundation of a career of an architect and the foundation of a society. And I think here what we will observe is the phenomenon of cross-pollination, of cross-education that will happen between all these international architects coming here, all these international architects collaborating with local offices, and this exchange that really happens through the local offices learning on the methodology of the design, maybe that they didn't learn in school here at the university, maybe they've been lacking some tools of learning our sort of different maybe methodology that we bring from abroad. They'll certainly have a positive effects, and I can just say we worked in many countries across the world. We worked in China, we worked in Brazil, we worked in Russia, and we can say that every time we could establish this collaborative process with the local offices, we can see also how the Chinese architecture drastically transformed itself and how many talented architects came and was born from the boom in the period where all the foreigners been working there. So, but beyond just collaborating with the local offices, I think we all have a responsibility of actually going and really teaching, also to contribute to the teaching in the schools here. So,
does one of you want to build on this? So this notion of criticality and the need for time and mutual learning, and maybe from your own experience.
Well, I'll try to develop further on this. It's of course, I mean, it's also a bit of a cliche. Of course, we're here, we discover. I mean, if I speak for ourselves, David and myself, the office, we're only arrived here about a year ago. Funnily enough, because I was part in one way or another when Berlage was working on these studios on Tirana 25 years ago. So I've seen it almost with this step, this enormous gap between that I saw the very beginning or the pre-history, and I discovered the place today, or today meaning last year. And perhaps to me what is the most fascinating thing in that discovery is its hypothetical robustness. And I think if you think about education, I think robustness is an important part. I think it's an important part of architecture in general, that robustness is somehow against efficiency, it's pro-ambiguity, it's many things at the same time. And I believe that in this very complex translation of, say, from attitude to form, robustness and hence a certain misunderstanding is key. So what I like very much about your presentation also, that without wanting it to be artistic, I mean the strictest sense of the word, I think we are not necessarily artists, we're architects, but there's a certain ambivalence, a certain ambiguity, which I believe also in my own teachings, I'll try to kind of communicate. And that has very much to do with place, but also somehow to do with misunderstanding. So that some figure, some thought, some type. And in that sense, I was very happy to hear Freek and Johan talk here this morning about this building, but also about a few projects they did. And they are, in fact, started, many of them 20 years ago, something like that. That maybe because they took so long, and maybe because there were many things at the same time, and maybe they were promises of architecture, and gradually they had to deal with their own promise and had to try to figure out what they were actually promising. I think they were a lesson in architecture. And for me, if we talk about architecture education, it's very much about that. How can you bring architecture back to a certain slowness, but not so much slow or fast, like how fast you build things or how fast you talk or how quickly do you organize something, but very simply because you can never be quite certain in how something you imagined is understood. And that misunderstanding, I believe, is so crucial to architecture education. And so in that sense, I think it's also a language which has no real language. So it's also a culture which does not have a real final rooted culture. So in some sense, when we're all here together, and in this sense, in this unfinished building, it's perfect for that. Our presence and our exchange is the beginning of education. I think you talk, but also more importantly, I think you make. If you do not make, you don't know anything.
I would like to add to that, and I agree. Robustness is a key question now, and unlearning is sometimes more important than learning. So if we come with all these lessons learned already from where we come from, all of us, and meet here, it's not so much, I think, about bringing knowledge, but it's more about somehow unlearning certain things we assumed were key, and maybe they actually aren't. Or maybe actually we have to understand how together we can create a different knowledge, a knowledge that creates a new understanding of a modernism here, Albanian modernism, if we want, that is not the same that we had. It can avoid many failures, but it can still be a modernism, because the project of modernism is still about somehow emancipating ourselves from all the kind of mysteries and mystifications. And this is not efficiency. Efficiency is just modernization. And there's a big difference between modernism and modernization. And we have to make that difference very clear. And at that point, for instance, sometimes in education, it's better not to use the computer, but to draw all semester long, build models, do everything but not the computer. And then in the last 3 weeks, allow your students to document the project on the computer, but not develop it on the computer. Talking about education very precisely and concretely here, we do that now because we understood that if you go with a machine, the efficiency in the first place, you already lose. You already lose that approach of actually looking at the complexity. And then what is really important is how the players come into the game here. It's not only the architects. Architecture is about, and we were reminded by the Prime Minister this very morning, how political every architectural decision is. Architecture is about involving so many people all the time. And so how do we create an education of interaction with the other experts, engineers, politicians, clients, that all has to start being part of education. Otherwise, we become an ivory tower.
Maybe we can also stretch that even further and start including the non-human. Maybe this is a bridge to you in the relationship with nature and ecosystems, and maybe also to juxtapose robustness with fragility, working with the landscape, working with the ecosystems. How can we learn? How can we indeed unlearn and not project lessons learned elsewhere and just assume that it will work in that condition?
Hello. So, good afternoon. Yes, everything that is being introduced here is highly interesting and difficult to correspond in such a short time, of course. I loved everything that was introduced. I think for me, I want to start with just a very very important thing in our processes, in the process of our works. which is normally we also in the academic studios I split idea, craft, and communication. So, but craft is really important for us. Of course, ideas are the ones, but craft brings this concept of robustus, the complexification, the commitment, the bringing together probable and improbable conditions and situations. So we put immense effort on the craft, and the craft is the moment also where we try to interact most. And of course, it's hard. In the experience here in Albania started 2 years ago, so it has been extremely intense. And I had the honor and the opportunity to travel from the north till the south, and we have fantastic plots on beautiful landscape. And it's very difficult not to try to have a dialogue with the landscape. And you know, I always say you cannot go easily against the stream. So you have to understand what is the stream. I like to surf. So when you have a wave, you have to take this energy out of the wave. If you don't understand, you don't do anything with it, you know. And this is a way to present nature. Nature is an energy, and Albania has amazing sources, amazing landscapes, and amazing sources of inspiration when it comes to nature. So whatever it relates to, from textures, from views, for example, the cliff we are working in Rana Dune, it's amazing because this dune is unique. It's almost 100-meter high dune. What can you do with a dune like that? You know, and actually you cannot do anything. You know, you just have to pay a tribute to it, and otherwise, you know, you are going to ruin a natural patrimonium. And this understanding is very hard, not in Albania in general, because we had the chance as office to work in already 5 UNESCO classified areas, and it's very hard to be there and to be like salt, you know, to exist but without existing, you know. And this is an effort that we continuously do, from the house in Greece where we capture the wind coming on the surface of water to cool down the house, a house that we build in Portugal that is a hair cushion, so the outside warm doesn't get inside and vice versa. So all these qualities are local qualities, are the qualities that you know, you have to understand and you have to incorporate. And we feel so much welcomed in this country, and we have this craft intention that is communal. Albanians are unlimited, resourceful, energetic people. It's very rare I write a message at 1 o'clock in the morning because I'm a late night worker. I like to work like in old times till 3, 4 in the morning. And sometimes I text an SMS at 2, 3, and there are clients answering, you know. And this shows many things, shows craft, shows passion, shows love for what they are doing, shows many things. And this is extremely important for a country, of course, and for architecture. And I just finished with this thing of the salt because it's one of the purposes of this moment. It's the importance that there is a very old tale in Persia, and there is a tribe that is sheltered inside a fortification. And there is a tribe running for some persecutors. And the tribe, from the running away, knocked at the door of this fortification and asked for shelter. And one of the representatives of the community came out with a glass of water full. And the representative from the tribe, escaping tribe, went to his pocket, grabbed a handful of salt and dropped inside the glass. And they were welcome and invited him inside the fortress, and they restarted a new society together. So this combining and being there without, you know, without imposing, always in a strict dialogue. What we found, what we have had, for me is very important, and this is then doable here. So, and this is also for me a leitmotif, so to say.
What I sense from listening to all of you, that there's a need for slowness or carving out time in this high-speed environment that you find yourself in. It made me think of Alejandro. I don't know if he's still here. It was, we had a chat last night where I think you also mentioned it this morning, this idea of you were like thinking from this periphery that where you start from Chile and comparing it to Albania. So you were used to be sitting in the back, metaphorically speaking, and you made your way to the front of the bus, and now you're maybe driving the bus, right? But it's a bus that is speeding. It's going extremely fast. So I think you're all kind of race car drivers at this point. And at the same time, you're asking for time, right? To get to know the place, to get to work with the local knowledge. Could you maybe talk a bit how you navigate this tension?
Well, of course, asking for time I find is both interesting and not interesting. Meaning, I think there's also an aspect in accepting the speed of things, but I think it has more to do with the definition of the figure. Maybe in a certain speed, certain things are kind of roughly defined. I think robustness is also some sort of roughness, or is some sort of imprecision. And maybe, I mean, it has been said by various speakers, and I do agree. Alejandro also said some very interesting things along these lines this morning. It has also to do with Albania not being part of Europe, so being outside of the norm, so to speak. So a place without norm is an interesting place, because one can improvise what matters and what doesn't matter so much. And I think, you know, without now making a plea for Europe to join Albania or Albania not to join Europe or whatever, I think there's a certain elegance in this idea that we can still choose. So that there's another hierarchy of things, which I think is attractive for many of us. So that one can be extremely simplistic at certain things and extremely precise and let go on many other things, because for some reason it has not been predefined. So, I mean, I think in that sense, a certain imprecision or robustness is also against the norm, or at least, and Wilfried was talking about that, about the modern. I mean, there was some sort of modern or a European modern which kind of inflated out of matters of protection, and to the point that it was, or it is, unmanageable. And it's like, you know, how these Cinquecento cars from the 50s became these gigantic Fiat 500 blow-up cars full of airbags. And so you would wish that we could go back to some sort of light version of that. And again, you sit here, and I do not think every building here is built that way, but the good ones are. They understand that there's an opportunity for another architecture which is simply more realistic, because it does not care about many things, maybe not that interesting after all, which were acquired for the sake of helping out people. But maybe we made a mistake. And so here we can still correct that mistake.
Olga, you wanted to respond also to that.
Yes, I mean, I wanted to, if we talk about collaboration and about dialogue and about time that we finally need, and earlier we were talking about mistakes and creative failures, and if we think of when we start the project, and what Amanda, or what's her name, Amanda was saying earlier, it's about the power of conceptual thinking and power of ambition for a project that has to be defined at the beginning, that carry on the project throughout the time, throughout the iterations, throughout the unknowns, throughout the accidents along the road. And for instance, when we started working here in Tirana, we have immediately decided to add public space as an ingredient to our design, as something we introduce in, as something that we give back to the community. As our project had a key location in a boulevard and had a key responsibility towards the public space. But when we designed the So we lifted the building from the ground to create a public plaza, a large multi-purpose space. And later on, throughout the design, we realized that our structural Swiss engineers have underestimated slightly the seismic criteria, which resulted in a few more columns coming down in this spectacular space. And basically, we had to rethink our public space and the nature it has. So by this time, we also have traveled to Tirana quite a few times, and we became fascinated by the character of the city today, by this collage of various scales of the different layers of architecture, periods of time, of the high rise, of the mid rise, of the low rise, of this kind of clashes of different languages, and also interstitial resulting public spaces that are kind of accidental. And in a way, by redoing the design of the bottom of our tower with this new structural constraints, but with this feeling of knowing the city better, I feel like we did a better design. We created the building that much more in line with the identity of Tirana. And I can say that this time, or this iterative process, or this collaboration was necessary to bring the project where it should be in terms of meaningfulness and kind of belonging to the place.
Thank you.
Just briefly to enlarge on that, the model that makes it possible at all to have these public spaces integrated into private projects here, and we also do that, and we could do this here, and we couldn't do it in the same way in any place before, is because there's a very strong political will next to the economic drive and force. So basically the balance between politics and economy are very different here than they are, for instance, in the EU or in other countries, because there's public building, of course, and then it's public. And then there's private building, and there are certain laws. But once the laws are being respected in France or Germany or Belgium, then basically you do the max. Here, somehow there's a political will to achieve something, and it goes through the political offices, every project. And this means there is something like a curatorial intent in the whole thing. And I really believe in that as a new way of understanding the city, not anymore master planning it, but curating it. The whole way of approaching architecture could become curatorial also in our places if we learn the lesson here and bring it there. So I think lessons learned means also that we bring a lot of knowledge that we experience here back to our countries. And I'm very, very, very optimistic about the learning effect for Europe.
I'm afraid we have to leave it here, but thank you so much. Maybe to once again use the analogy of the bus driver, let's say, I do think what is hovering above this conversation, do we need guardrails or do we need seat belts? Like, where lies the responsibility? Should we frame? No responsibility. Okay, that's maybe good for the final round of discussions. Thank you for now. We're gonna move on. No, we have a short video message, right? Are you gonna tell everyone? I think it's someone calling from Japan, Toyo Ito. Thank you. Yeah, Toyo Ito. No introduction. Architect. Here he comes.
今回ブレッド&ハートフェスティバルのご招待いただきありがとうございました。残念ながら足の調子が悪くて、現地に伺うことはできないので大変申し訳ありません。現在アルバニアでは2つの住宅地の開発計画に関わらせていただいておりますが、いずれも大変新鮮でエキサイティングなプロジェクトです。特に首相のエディ・ラマさんからは私の普段考えていることを思いっきり表現してほしいというふうに言われ、大変大きな力をいただきました。頑張ってやりたいと思っております。私の友人がこんなことを言っております。文明は土から離れ、そして文化は土に接していくことであるというわけです。確かにカルチャーはカルティベイトという言葉から来ているように、土地に根ざし、 長い時間をかけて耕していくものであるというふうに私も考えております。アルバニアのプロジェクトは、まさしく、土に接しているという点で、大変エキサイティングであり魅力的なプロジェクトだと思っております。近代主義の建築は、資本主義の経済と結びついて、ますます土から離れていって、しまう傾向が強く、東京もその例に漏れませんが、そういった点でアルバニアには大変期待をしております。アルバニアの今回のフェスティバルが素晴らしい成果を上げ、そして、それを契機にして、アルバニアで新しい建築が次々に生まれていくことに大変期待をしております。よろしくお願いします。
All right. 1 second.
I just couldn't prevent myself to share something with you about the master we heard, and to tell you why he said that I allowed him to express his thought in its fullest. We had a Zoom where we were presented the project, and the master plan was exactly like this circle, where there were several circles, and then there was a second level of buildings which were all the time covered by clouds. And it was very obvious that something was off, because all that was very clearly defined and visible was very Toyo Ito. But the second level, like having here some other buildings, were kind of not very Toyo Ito. And I asked him, and I said, what do you think about this second level? My instinct, going back to Sam's gangster narrative, told me that this was the client. And in a very Japanese way, he said, this is to accommodate in full the demand from the client. And I said to him, but what about if we take off the buildings with the clouds and leave just what is in the first layer? And it was a silence. And then after the silence was the question, is it possible? And I said, depends from you. It's your decision. And so the decision was made in a kind of Japanese knife cut. And the master plan is beautiful now. It's fully Toyo Ito. And Ada had to manage the client trauma successfully. So Albania didn't got this badge of shame to intervene in Toyo Ito's way of thinking, and so that's why he said, thank you to allow my thoughts in the fullest. So just to give an explanation of what he said, because I'm following all the discussions, and it's very obvious that there is still a next step to be made to fully embrace both the ambition to build magnificent architecture with the less is more, to be educated to the investors. And it will be painful, but we will have to undertake this step too. So thank you for allowing me to intervene.
you so much. So it takes a bit of a wider support system for, designers to take their agency seriously. Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. I think, I just want to check the time quickly. I think we are slightly ahead of schedule. So this actually allows me to, for the people who just came in, we are currently at the end of round 3, to share a few of the takeaways that I wrote down. In no particular order, new mistakes are evolution, but repeat mistakes are dangerous. Try to avoid commodification of land and water, connect with street wisdom, work with local materiality, shorten supply chains, but make sure it's buildable. Technological innovation doesn't make the difference. Think about possible future uses. We need time. Take off your shoes as a leveler. Foster cross-education. Robustness is key. Unlearning is sometimes more important than learning. Nature is energy. And take responsibility to create public space. And also take this project seriously as a learning opportunity for Europe. Now it's time to move on to session 4. And I'm expecting something to happen. No? Okay. I will just... So obviously, the previous session, the lessons learned focus already generated a lot of, let's say, constructive ingredients for the future in terms of looking ahead. And this session, we want to focus on that more specifically, with the main question being, what are your wishes for Albania's future? And the further development of its local design culture. Now, you've noticed all the culinary references so far, right? We're talking about bread, salt and pepper, and taking a look in the kitchen of architecture. But now we're going to actually talk about, let's say, culinary philosophy a little bit more specifically. Right, Katia?
Exactly. So I'm very happy to welcome Elena Reygadas to the stage. Welcome, Elena. So Elena Reygadas is a very renowned chef based in Mexico City. Your restaurant, Rosetta, has been awarded a Michelin star last year, and the year before you were, you won the award of the best female chef of the world. And we were very happy to see that we have the Bread and Heart Festival, but there's also Bring Some Salt, Please. And you were actually here coming as one of the SALT guests. And it was wonderful to already speak with you before about also thinking a bit more about these recipes that we are creating. So today we have been discussing what has been cooking over the last years, decades in Albania. And I think we've already been gathering, Mark has just mentioned some of the ingredients and perhaps also some of the recipes that we would like to take into the future when it comes to spatial development and architecture in Tirana and Albania. So when we talk about ingredients and recipes and menus, we thought it would be amazing to ask you as our expert here in this room among architects. when you are designing a menu, what are your considerations? And maybe this goes back to what Toyo Ito was just saying about connecting to the soil, because I know that you're also working a lot with indigenous ingredients. And so what are your considerations with grounding the menu in the place where it is served? As a question. Let's sit down.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm very honored to be between so many architects and me not being an architect. And honestly, I was very attracted when Michel Roquin, my architect friend from Mexico City, invited me. I was very attracted for the title of the Congress. Honestly, my only connection with Albania before was the art of Henry Sala, which I really admire. And I was very curious to know more about this country. Like, I ask myself, like, what they eat, what's in the land. I suppose there's olives, but I'm very curious. I just landed some hours ago, so I'm just new in this land. And regarding your question, I would say that, yes, Toyo Ito's message really touched me, because I do think that culture is in the land. And whenever I think of a menu, the first thing that I approach is the land, the place where I am, what's in season, what's used, what's the history towards and relationship to the table, what are the rituals, and taking all those things into consideration, then I start to visualize a menu.
And how do you see your role as a chef, as a kind of principal designer, like connecting or working with all these relations with the land, but also with working with your team, and then also working for the visitors of the restaurant?
Well, when you decide to be cooking what you do in life and it becomes your way of life, I believe you become like a bridge in many ways. You are a bridge between the people of the land and the people that believe in you and that cook together with you. And also a bridge with the guests that put all the trust in you. I really believe that cooking is an act of love and of trust. But then also you have many responsibilities, because you have to decide who are you providing your source from. All those decisions have a big impact. So then you become more than just a cook. You really sometimes realize that all these decisions can make a big difference. So then it becomes a big responsibility.
Yeah, the type of responsibility that we've already been addressing a lot, I think, also today. I know that something you also do in the restaurant is that people can always come in and walk in, also sometimes without a reservation. So how do you think about accessibility of welcoming? Also, we talk about the hospitality of Albania, but I think you're also an expert in hospitality. So how do you maintain this accessibility also in the fine dining context, perhaps?
Well, I believe when you have a restaurant, you need to think it for everybody in different ways. And in the last years, Mexico City has become very, very visited by many people from abroad. But I do believe, which I really, I'm grateful about it, but I really want to always keep talking to the people of Mexico, to my people. I think it's very important to never forget who you are and where you come from. And in that sense, I believe in places, in restaurants that keep themselves open for walk-ins, for locals, for the people that are in the neighborhood. So we have a way to, of course, have reservations, but also people that come in a last-minute way, because I do think that the magic of food and of the table, it's also spontaneity and joining in the last minute. So I do think that's very important.
Something that also struck me about your work is that you're also trying to provide opportunities to new generations of female chefs to cook. And I think this responsibility of a focus on education and to educate a new generation has also been discussed a lot today. How do you view this role of education?
I feel education can be approached in many different ways. For me, more than having a scholarship to educate younger generations is not about educating. It's more about sharing failures, sharing dreams, sharing knowledge, learning from others, and really creating a network between young women that are just starting a path. But I don't approach it as an education, as I know more than you. I don't like that kind of a relationship, because I have lots to learn also from younger generations. So I think it's more about sharing. And I do think that sharing is one of the most important things that humans need to do, and it's one of the most rewarding as well.
Maybe finally so we just opened the last session of today, where we try to bring future wishes for Albania and Tirana. Maybe listening to what has been said, when we think about recipes for the future, so like how do we go forward, is there an ingredient that comes to mind? Maybe that you want to bring from Mexico City, or something that you've heard, so an ingredient that we can bring to the future.
Well, I would say that the ingredient is to listen to each other, to really understand the place you are into, and take time to really get in. Really, I think time and listening is something that we are lacking so much. And in a moment where I can start to see Albania is now, and everything that all of you architects are doing for this country, I do think it's very important to never stop listening to the locals and to think everything you are doing for the people of this land, first of all. I think that's very, very important to consider.
Yeah, I think in the last panel session we discussed a lot about the fast pace of the bus that Albania is in the front seat, and I guess cooking and the kitchen of a restaurant like yours must be also has a fast pace, I guess. But it's interesting. So you still are able to introduce time and to slow down.
Well, the kitchen, on the one hand, is fast. However, the table has to be slow. I do think that the best food, the best way of cooking is the one that gives and creates a table where there could be conviviality, there could be sharing of different points of view, there could be what we call in Mexican a beautiful term that I love that is called sobremesa. That means over the table, which means that you stay after a meal for many, many hours, and that's the best meal, the one that you stay and really talk to each other and really enjoy and have conviviality. And I would think that the same could happen with architecture. The buildings, they're spaces that keep people in and bring people together, should be the best architects.
Thank you so much for bringing the ingredient of the sobremesa. And so the kitchen is fast, but the table is slow. Thank you, Elena.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Elena.
Yeah.
Now it's time for our fourth and last encounter, for which I'd like to ask Minsuk and Mikkel to come forward. Please take a seat wherever you feel comfortable.
You? Good to see you. Maybe you sit there? Sure. Why not?
Hello. So, Minsuk is founder of the Seoul-based firm Mass Studies. He designed last year's Serpentine Pavilion and has recently come to work in Albania. Mikkel Frost is the co-founder of the Aarhus-based Zebra. Has several projects underway, including the Skanderbeu Stadium in Korça and Mount Tirana, which is like next door, over here, disoriented. Yes. So for this round, we would like to talk about your wishes for Albania's future. Minsuk, I would like to start with you. Yesterday we had a brief chat.
Yes.
You said something about kind of using the rapid development of South Korea in the past 50 years or so as an analogy or a mirror. What do you think are the lessons that can be learned from that developments that you?
By the way, I'm very happy to be here in this room full of collective intimacy whole day. And thank you having me part of it. Real honor. Yes, I think I'm in a appropriately right section, which is looking ahead, because I'm quite new to this endeavor since last fall. And although I have been making, I think this is my 6th trip. So I've been coming here quite intensely, and this is not something I do often, because I'm based in Seoul, South Korea, where keeps me quite busy and quite interested, where I passionately love and hate many things at the same time, and architecture is a result of what we do is from that. And somehow I fell into, of course, this amazing architect list I saw, admire, but I think it was the very beginning, before I know Prime Minister Rama, I knew about this amazing hotel that I'm staying just next to this building by the Belgian team. So for me, it has been, architecture has been a very fortunate sort of entry point of understanding and engaging, and sometimes hopefully we can contribute to the world. So for me, it was when I first met a prime minister, he mentioned about the Albanian used to be known as the North Koreans of European country. So I did a very quick crash course study of history, and I said I was very aware of that. But also I'm coming from a South Korean generation that until mid-70s, which was my childhood time, South Korea was actually poorer than North Korea. So I understand that very well, that this intensity and the stress and strange human behavior that comes with it and so on, of this fast growth and changing, almost moving target-like context that we dealt with. So in a way, this what we call this compressed sort of a history, which I'm kind of, in a way, almost have an affinity with. Also, I see almost a similar energy that I'm so familiar with. Not that I'm being nostalgic or anything, but I have been quite interested. And one of the, speaking about North Korea, one of the things that makes me care about more is actually to make it things personal to me. And I also want to see this as my, not only hopefully the contributing, looking ahead of Albania's future through our little effort, but also looking ahead with my own neighboring country of North Korea, which has been this tumultuous condition and disconnected for some time, and who knows what will happen, but eventually it will have to change. And also this has been my agenda to maybe be a spy, or maybe see the most hopeful scenario that possibly, hopefully, with the great leadership it has here in this territory, maybe I can also imagine something better for my own little corner of the world. So that's maybe my long answer for your question.
Mikkel, generally, what are your wishes for Albania in terms of spatial development?
Well, I tried to prepare myself because I got that question in advance, obviously, and it's a very difficult question. I'm usually really good at answering questions, like very fast and concise. If you ask me for a column in a cantilever, I'll say no. I'm very precise in that manner, but this is a different kind of thing. So I had to speculate quite a bit, and I kept kind of returning to what I really like about Albania today, and that I want to see Albania keep in the future and not kind of lose on the way. And one of the main things is the way that architecture is shared with the general public. The first time I went to present here, I was quite surprised to see that it was televised. It was broadcast live on television. And Claudio, who works in the office, told me my parents are watching from Italy. It was like global almost. And I think this openness and this willingness to share with the public and educate the general public on architecture and urban spaces is great. And it occurred to me, oh my God, we're doing it all wrong in Denmark and many other places of the world where this is like a closed off academic elitist kind of session. Because we need to remind ourselves that architecture is for the people and that architects are indeed servants of society. We're not doing this for ourselves. We're doing it for the people that should thrive in our buildings. And so I hope in the future this is something you'll keep doing in Albania and possibly develop even further.
One more question I'd like to ask is, in the documentary by Anneke for the Albanian Pavilion in Venice, you said the freedom and trust in Albania is intoxicating.
Yeah.
Could you expand on that?
No, that has to do with the hospitality, which is the whole sort of theme and concept of the festival, right? If you make a party here, everybody contributes, you get together, you improvise. It's like a Nike slogan, just do it, a kind of thing that happens. And all of a sudden you have a party in a very short time and you do it together and you collaborate and on trust. And I might add, and this is not something we often talk about, but for instance, in terms of paying the bill, Albanians pay hours after we invoice them. I have never, ever experienced that anywhere in the world. I've had a person calling me on a Saturday complaining that he couldn't pay. It turned out that we got the VAT number wrong, and he insisted that he was going to pay it immediately. So there's just an amazing sort of collaboration of spirit and trust here that is just unbelievable.
And in terms of your own practice, I mean, I can imagine you have ambitions, right? You would like it to evolve in a certain direction, and how would you like to see that perhaps in projects that are currently underway or new projects? How would you see that land maybe, or experimented with in Albania?
Well, I think in terms of growth, we have to change, I think, our perspective of what growth is. It's not about taller or bigger or more square meters. It's definitely more about quality and improving the lives of people, and about welfare and stuff, which also ties into architecture. So it's not about breaking records or setting records, but new standards of quality. And going back to what I started saying, the fact that you have these competitions that are broadcasted so openly, I'm quite certain that it will lead to very, very high quality within the next decade or so, because you will educate a whole generation of architects here who have seen like the highest level of architecture performed by Pritzker winners and whatnot, and they would aspire to that. And so you will reach that quality, I think, in Albania in the future, and I definitely wish that for the country.
Minsuk, so you say you've been here like 6 times by now, but it's only the first time was only about half a year ago.
Yes.
I think for the past a short while, yeah. And then for the past decade or 2 decades, you've mainly been doing projects in South Korea. How do you feel about landing here, and how do you deal with the kind of the tensions of that?
My answer would be, I see, although I have been contained in a small country, but been having so much absorbed and having fun with exploring diverse conditions, and I think almost every project I felt very foreign to my own country, partly because I'm product of various cultures, let's say, but also partly the context and the cultural condition in this small country, which is very mountainous anyway. That's also very similar to what I feel very affinity to this small nation. That is very, I have to always start from a clean slate almost. So in that sense, what I'm doing here is not very different. And also I think it partly has to do with this growth. You mentioned this grand narrative of modernism equals westernization, and this whole 20th century, late 20th century, my country's narrative has kind of finished. And I kind of arrived back in my country 20 years ago in this shipwreck state of the 20th century. And in a way, here I think it has a much, let's say, robust energy compared to where I started and came back to. But also, I think what's very different is that this place, I also remember very first time meeting a prime minister said, do what you think is the best. I think Amanda also presented that quote, but don't listen to fully the market demand and speculations and maximum FARs and so on. I think that was actually most radical and empowering and most divine, encouraging role to architect I heard in many years, because in many decades in a way. So for me, I mean this, it's of course it's very different, but also I feel very, in tune with this culture. But I think it's also me coming from unique, let's say, background here, who has seen the being in the receiving end of last 30 years of Korea, where every talented, admired architect comes to Korea contributing. We have Stephen Hall here, also Dominique, and you have some amazing works contributed and really changed the culture from industry or construction sort of a business to a culture that becomes much more dignified role for architect. However, I have to say that also there has been more disappointment of this great talented architect come with the ambition and maybe lack of communication, knowledge, or the fast time speed and things like that. So I do hope that there are a lot of people with these great dreams looking ahead, I think find a way, their own unique way with their clients and also with their collaborators, somehow localize themselves, because I think we kind of passed the moment that architect runs around with their bag, or tool bag, or special gift, God's gift, and present everywhere they go. I think that phase is obviously long over, and I think this is a great way to communicate. And one of the things I wanted to suggest was, this is such a great let's say a forum today, and I know that it's going to be the annual thing, but I would suggest that why don't we have it kind of constantly, because I realize with my frequent trips, it's coffee shop or hotel lounges become a quite spontaneous place for that. But also, as we know, most architects here are really desperate to grab something and through a collective intelligence and what's happening, what has been happening here as a context to respond to, but at the same time, what will happen to here, because so much is happening at the same time, as I have described as an almost moving target, like a context. So I think this could be a great sort of maybe there's a way to have a space to systematically make an assessment almost real time what's happening next to where you're designing, or maybe we can find some other, your neighbor architect can come and they can come and actually brainstorm together and things like that. And together with the local architect, and there's some brilliant young architect local, I think that would also be a really amazing thing. No?
Maybe this building should become this permanent.
I was going to say the same.
Yeah. Why not?
Yeah, I think that could be amazing, right? Like maybe this can be a permanent place to
have an exhibition all the time.
Exactly. Yeah. Maybe I would have a concluding question for Mikkel. I mean, you're also you have a major project under construction here, Mount Tirana, and I was just curious, what do you wish for it to contribute to the future of Tirana as a city?
Well, I think it's going to be part of a series of buildings actually forming the ring around the Central Plaza, the Skanderbeg Plaza. And so it doesn't work individually as a building alone, it also works with the rest of the buildings that are being planned and it will come up along with it. So it should just, kind of fit in with those and the overall master plan. I think it was done back in the zeros at some point, a very sort of radical and bold master plan that they are actually sticking with, which is quite impressive. Many times when you make a master plan, they tend to kind of, dissolve along the way as years passes. But here they kind of stick with it, and I think that's important. That it's just a piece in the puzzle, and not necessarily an icon on its own.
Would you like to add to that?
Yeah, for me, my one very specific suggestion is, I have this thing about doing away with the private cars, because I think we talked about a lot of learning and unlearning, but I think also we are working with some towers that goes down to 7 stories and 8 stories, which is quite common in my own country, and that's what I told was happening now. But also you can find a way like a New York model where you kind of discourage these things. And I myself, as a person with able to drive but never own a private car, and that has been the smartest decision I had. And I think I see also this city which is perfect size for smaller vehicles, and I think you kind of find a way to organize. And I think it's, again, we're not in this most powerful overvaluing our capacity through architecture, but I think it should only work with the also imagination of how we'll live in the future within this physical structure. So I think this kind of lifestyle, because I noticed one thing very popular here is a used Korean Mercedes-Benz here, and everybody's driving very big cars. We had that phase totally, but let's skip that maybe and really promote the other way. I think it would be very helpful for what we do here, and this place is perfect for that, I think.
Thank you. I think it ties in nicely with the new metro lines that were mentioned earlier today. Mikkel, Minsuk, thank you so much for your contribution.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
So, and now it's time for another quick and final Vox Pop. Imona, are you still there outside?
I'm here and I can hear you well. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you clearly.
Fantastic. I cannot see you right now, but it's actually quite sad that this will be the last Vox Pop for today. But it's quite a wonderland. So if you get a chance to go outside, there is plenty of pavilions, sculptures, models on one-to-one scale here for everyone to visit. So I'm actually here with perhaps one of the youngest architects here present today. She is a student in the first year of architecture. Her name is Sofiana Ago, and I'd really like to ask her a question regarding, as an architecture student, how do you see your journey starting from here, even based on the conference today? And also, what are your hopes and wishes for the future of Tirana and Albania in terms of architecture and spatial development?
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'd like to say that right now we students are experiencing the exam season, so it's a quite busy time of our lives. But being here today is what reminds me why I came here, why I am an architecture student, and why I love this profession. As for the future, I'd say that my opinion is not quite yet well seasoned. But as a future architect, I'd love to see Tirana as the capital of Albania to be more harmonized in the future, so the buildings would work as parts of an organism where each of them is unique, but together they're completely harmonized. Our culture has a lot of symbols and motifs that are beautiful, and I think that we should implement them in the future buildings.
Is that also kind of a feedback to perhaps foreign architects to say we should implement more of Albanian culture in architecture?
Well, in a way, yes. I think that the best architect is the one that looks at the past and that also interprets it in his own way while considering who will be inhabiting the space that he's creating.
Fantastic. Okay, I look forward to see that marriage of the local and foreign more and more going forward. Okay, thank you very much. I think we can pass the line over to you.
Thank you,
and thank you very
Ashmona.
much for the beautiful sessions today.
Thank you. Warm applause for Ashmona and the students. All right. Here we are already at the very last panel of today on the future wishes, while the Azan is calling us. We continue the conversation. I would like to invite Vinca Dubbeldam, Pier Paolo Tamburelli, Robert Edward Grant, and Falma Tzazi to the front. Please get them a mic and join us here. Hi, welcome. Warm applause for our guests. Hi. And here you are. Hi. So I will do some brief. Yeah. Okay, yeah, good. So we'll wait for the Azan. Thank you. I think that was a beautiful reminder also that today is a beautiful holiday, Eid al-Adha, celebrated by many here also in Tirana. I would like to introduce our guests. Checking, Mikkel, you're clicking. Yeah, cool. First, Vinca Dubbeldam, Dutch architectural designer, founder of Architectonics, also professor at UPenn. Thank you so much for coming. At the same time, I'm looking at see if the technicalities are working. Do we have some images also? Yeah, okay, then we go back to it later. Then we'll just continue. Pier Paolo Tamburelli, thank you. Architect, founding partner of Bauku, also former editor at San Rocco and chair of design theory at the Technical University of Vienna. Also doing a master plan at the student city here in Tirana, or strategic plan, as I understood it. Thank you very much for joining. Robert Edward Grant, thank you for joining as well. I have a beautiful description from you here as well. It says, a polymath whose work traverses mathematics, design, sacred geometry, and consciousness. Very curious to learn more about that also. And to conclude, Falma Tzazi, do I pronounce it correct? Yeah, more or less. That's correct, good. Cultural project manager here in Tirana and a researcher who's deeply embedded in Albania's urban transformation. So I'm very much looking forward to the local perspective as well. Thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, thank you, René, for this introduction. Apologies for this technical hiccup. Hopefully we will see some images that help illustrate your work. I actually want to start with you, Falma. We know each other, full disclosure. You're the go-to person for me when it comes to Albania, and I know you've been living between different cultures and contexts for many years now, but also having worked intensively here, also with 51 and 4E on the square, but also here on the tower next door. And you made a beautiful book, How Things Meet, which talks very intimately about the development of that building from a very personal perspective. And this is the final round. You've been listening all day long. You've been excited to join us here. And here we are with all the architects coming in, talking about your city, your country. I'm just wondering, like, how do you feel and what first comes up when thinking back on today?
Hello. Thank you for having me today. And yeah, that's for me the most difficult part of the day, but also the most beautiful too also. And yeah, I think I'll kind of try to formulate a wish whose bits and pieces I think has been said and mentioned through the day. And I'll start I'll do that by flashbacks and flash forwards in history. In 2013, Edi Rama, back then mayor of Tirana, made a TED talk called How to Take Your City Back by Paint. And in that talk, at that moment, he didn't know even if he was going to lead Albania to be the prime minister. The elections were ahead. But in that talk, he explained his vision of how art can transform a city. He explained what he had been going through in order to make this happen. And he explained also what actually it made to the city and to its people. And it was a moment of clarity and of explaining with an exterior view to ourselves what was going on, but also was a kind of a moment to explain the potential of what it can be and what would come. So my wish for a next step would be like a kind of a similar talk about what kind of a game changer is architectural design and architecture for this country to the Albanian people. By harvesting also what have been said and pronounced and exchanged this day, to bring it to them, to all Albanians, the non-architect Albanians, the non-developer Albanians, the non-owner Albanians, and to share with them what they also have been experiencing. And I'm saying this for several reasons. One of the reasons is because it has been mentioned here that it can be Albania be an innovative laboratory for our architectural design and architecture. Well, why not an innovative laboratory of participative processes? A second reason is that in Albanian history, I won't be telling it now, but states and governments have been having a special relationship with architecture since the modern foundation of institutions in mid-20s. However, and now there is also such a special relationship. I mean, we cannot, but what kind of relationship it is, how it is different, and what we are doing, what we will do with it, I think we owe it to explain to researchers, to historians, and to the people, and to embark them in a journey that would make things more sustainable and would also blur this kind of limits between international, not international, local, not local, Albanian architecture, not Albanian architecture. These are tags and categories that we use also as researchers, and would be a nice laboratory to kind of blur also all these kind of limits. So yes, it's a kind of a wish for let's say for radical openness that we have been doing previously here in Albania. The Center for Openness and Dialogues is one of those projects, and that we can do here in Albania. And I think this would be a way also. So what this has been going on in what it will bring to architecture, well, testing this kind of participity, sometimes of even let's say direct democracy. Well, it will be a way to, and also to connect architecture to all democratic processes.
And what is the risk if none of this happens, or if not all of this happens, if it does not also become this laboratory for radical participatory processes, but only for architectural design?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Maybe you can, if you have an answer now, or?
I mean, when I made my wish, I made it based on the project we have been doing.
So the risk that it does not happen is really small, but when and how and under which impulses and at which moment, that maybe is the question.
We'll get back to that for sure. Binka, I want to talk to you, maybe zooming out a bit more, right? As one of those outsiders, to still stick to those terms. And based on your experience and maybe also what you heard today, what are you wishing for and how do you look forward, and what are you maybe also taking away from Falma's plea here?
Yeah, which was a beautiful one. So when I was living in Holland, Remcola said, you're really not Dutch, you're more European. I live in the US and I still am Dutch and I'm fourth green card. I'm adopted by the Mexicans and have been to Rosetta many times. And I feel now adopted a little bit by Albania. So I guess I'm not really of a place anymore, you could say. But at the same time, when I come here, I try and find a little place that is in the middle of Tirana, where the roads are not paved, and you see the local architecture, which means that a taxi can never find the address, which is another drama. So at night you tend to circle a little, but what is beautiful about that is that when you go in the middle of Tirana, in these small streets, that it really is where the people live, where they work, where the kids play, where you find absolutely stunning houses with gorgeous courtyards. And most of all, to go back to the meditation this morning, when it was so quiet and we were all, for a moment, not talking, what we heard was actually birds. And that is extremely rare in a city. And I remember thinking when she asked what is the best for the future of Tirana, and I thought the best is if in 25 years you can still hear the birds and no cars, to go back to Min's remark earlier. But for me, the future of Tirana, I agree with that student. You have to go back to the past. And it made me think of Albania's very wild past, which is interesting. And my first introduction to Albania was in 2005, when a very daring documentary maker in Holland called Klaartje Karijns made a documentary called The Brooklyn Connection. And the Brooklyn Connection is, and I live in Brooklyn, so I felt connected. But the Brooklyn Connection is a movie on an Albanian roofing contractor in Brooklyn who lost his brother in Serbia in the war and hence became a freedom fighter, whatever that means, and is really amazingly good in getting contraband out of the country at night. And my documentary maker friend, 8 months pregnant, went on the back of a jeep through the mountains with these guys, getting the contraband out of the country, in order then to progress to have a barbecue in this guy's garden in Brooklyn, talking about Albanian hospitality. This all to say, what I think is amazing about this country is that the freedom fighting and the connectedness to where you come from, that you come from Brooklyn to go and facilitate some sort of level of safety for your people or fighting for this freedom. I think what you're saying is really important, but also it means that we have to really make sure that we keep looking at the center of Tirana with these incredible treasure spots of inner gardens. And someone said this morning, like, make sure you densify so you can also leave enough green. I think Winnie also mentioned it on the coast, but to kind of say, sometimes if you densify, you can empty up land to give nature and forest back into the city, like the old houses in the city center. So I think there's something really poetic and beautiful about the birds and about a future where nature and architecture really constantly are interrelated, which then means people can work, play, and live in the same spot, like they are now doing in the inner city.
Thank you. Maybe it's nice we hear from all of you first, and then we start to connect it. Robert, I'm curious, as someone who's knowledgeable working in between disciplines, how do you assess this moment now? Because you're the SALT, right? You were invited to come here, you're the non-architect. As a form of knowledge production and sharing, how do you assess this moment? And what can we learn and how can we take this into the future maybe?
First, I'm very grateful to be invited here. It's really wonderful to be together with you and to meet so many incredible architects from around the world. It's been kind of a dream of mine for a long time, actually, because I had always wanted to go more into the realm of architecture, but never did. I went into sculpture and into geometry, which are both adjacencies. I've spent a lot of my last 10 years analyzing probably the world's most famous architecture on the planet, and that would be the Great Pyramid. The Great Pyramid and the two other pyramids, Khafre and Menkaure. And one of the things that I found with it that I think is relevant to what we're talking about in harmonic architecture going forward is that I was curious to understand why the slope angle of the pyramid was 51.85397 degrees precisely. I was also curious to know why Khafre Pyramid had a 53.13 degree angle, and I was further curious to know why Menkaure Pyramid had a 51.34 degree angle. Now, we're taught from dynastic Egyptian history that these were all just arbitrary angles that were set by a grandfather, a son, and a grandson, and that these were burial places. But actually, I think there's a deeper story. The deeper story is that there's an exact proportion for the third pyramid to have a 51.34 degree angle would require it to have a proportion of its height versus its 1/2 base of 5/4. That gives it exactly a 51.34 degree angular slope. That's at the apothegm. Now, if we look at the Khafre Pyramid, the second pyramid on Giza Plateau, to have a 53.13 degree angle, it must have a 4/3, 1/2 base, right, base, to have a 53.13 degree angle, giving it the mythical 3-4-5 proportion that we know is so beautiful. That's why it has the 53.13 degree angle. So then I thought, well, what about the Great Pyramid? We have 5/4, 4/3, and the inverse can be depicted as taking the full base over the height. So if we take the full base of Khafre Pyramid, which I said was 4/3 for half base, the full base would then be 6/4, which reduces to 3/2. So now we have 5/4, 4/3, 3/2 is perhaps the Great Pyramid 2/1. And guess what? It wasn't. But it was 2/1 pi as the full base. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 pi. Now these are proportions that are actually, if you're a musician and you know music theory, you would know that 5/4 is the major third. You would know that its inverse, 8/5, would be the minor sixth in music. You would also know that 4/3 is the perfect fourth, and that 3/2 is the perfect fifth. And 2/1 is somewhat enigmatic, because 2/1 would give you an octave relationship. The King's Chamber within the Great Pyramid is 2/1, so that's where you get to the next octave. But then if we look at 2/1 pi, what is that relationship? It's telling us something about going on a journey or a circle, right? Some sort of circle. And that's what gives us the 51.85397 degrees.
I'm really curious how this is going to connect.
I am.
I am. We're curious. Yeah,
I'm going to get there.
Yeah.
So basically, the reason why this becomes so important is that what you start realizing is that each of these proportions are the musical scale. Exactly. Exactly. The square root of 2/1 also embedded within that 2/1 pi relationship. Now, harmonics. What is the future, I believe, of architecture? It is going back to the ancient wisdom. The understanding that harmonic is fundamental to nature, it's fundamental to architecture and the buildings that we build here, and the feelings that we have associated with those, because each of those musical notes are related to emotional states. Whether we recognize this or not, Donald Hoffman is a very famous professor at University of California, Irvine. He is the world's expert on cognitive mapping of human thought. And he asked me one day, he said, can you give me an equation for human emotion, a mathematical equation for human emotion? And I said, well, I haven't had my coffee yet today. That's not an easy one. And then I started thinking about it. wait a minute, it already exists. It's called musical interval. As architects, you have an opportunity now to understand that different emotional states are derived. The major third gives us exactly this feeling of divine love when you walk into a room. That would be a 5/4 proportion of a rectangular room. The minor third, right, is going to bring us sadness. The major sixth is going to give us something that's going to have us feel more like winning. So these types of feelings, which there's actually been a lot of research done, and this is used in filmology and movies today, to create the feelings within the architecture that you want to emote. What are the feelings you want to create? That's where I see this feeling when I come here with this big mass prayer that happened this morning. This is a spiritual place. There's something special about Albania. I feel like it's growing. I feel like it's alive. I feel like there's a future for it that is unique, that is part of this harmonic transition that the world is now going through. And I think each of the architects here have an opportunity to start integrating this harmonic wisdom that came from ancient sources into the future.
Interesting, interesting. Curious indeed to go a bit deeper into how you would assess this building, but maybe it's nice to bring in Pier Paolo. Maybe you can also respond to the harmonic being the future of architecture, but maybe you can just take us where, no, for sure not.
No, I'm sorry. I know you would wish, but I will not talk about pyramids. Although I think there could be a link in between pyramids and what I wanted to say, which is this book by Kadare that's called Pyramid, which is a book about power in socialist Albania. But what I want to say is something about power in a much more friendly version. And I would like to go back to what Xavier de Heiter said today. He spoke of contemporary condition of architecture in Albania as a condition of where vision replaces rules, which to a certain extent I agree, but I would reformulate. I think it's a condition in which ambition goes beyond means, which I think it's very interesting, particularly if you observe it from a Western European condition, where we have exactly the opposite problem. So we have the means, but we don't have the ambition. And actually one of the most consistent cultural tracks that have been playing out in Western Europe in the last 20 years was to convince us that we didn't have the means. So the so-called austerity is to convince yourself you don't have the means. So we have so little ambition that we try to believe that we don't even have the means. And we don't see the problem of lack of ambition. This is very interesting in working in Albania because it's so close, particularly if you come like me from Italy, but it's a sort of mirror image. And it's a mirror image in which you are missing more or less everything you have in the other place, but you have a lot of other things that you're normally missing at home. This, I think, is also very much related to the work and the trajectory of what Edi Rama did as a prime minister. Rama took the responsibility to project authority, to accept the fact that he was the authority, and created the condition to support architecture by the presence of an authority, a democratic authority behind it, which is once again something that is unbelievably missing in contemporary Western Europe. And my question for the future of Albania, and my wish, is to maintain this ambition. Although by integrating into the European Union, which I think is a reasonable goal for Albania, this ambition will be at risk because we, the European Union, are the masters of lack of ambition. What a political scientist called Peter Meyer called some 10 years ago, ruling the void or governing the void. So this idea that whatever institution, the first move of whatever institution is to deny itself as an institution. So if you are a museum of painting, you say, well, yes, but we are more than a museum of painting, or we should not only be a museum of painting in order to avoid the responsibility of being a museum of painting, which I think is a very fake democratic way to not be democratic in the end. So my wish is that, that we learn something from Albania, and we learn how to rebuild a bit our institutions so that they take a little bit more responsibility for what they are responsible for in the end.
Yeah, beautiful, and indeed very different from your plea. And I would like to come back to Valma and maybe building on Pier Paolo's call for ambition and to prolong that and to strengthen that. Having worked inside of institutions also in this country, having dealt with multiple ambitions, how do you think about the role of ambition also vis-a-vis Europe, let's say, and the country's ambition to join the EU? Could it have another path? Could it stick to another type of ambition?
Well, if I combine the Prime Minister's promise, or what also European authorities have been telling us, that we are in the path of integration in 2030, and what Pier Paolo is saying, I mean that we have 5 years to do what is needed to do, and then we can. So it's the time to put forward all our ambitions and to make those happen. That's one of the part. It's a joke, but maybe partially true. The second part is related, if it's realistic, the integration of Albania, and as an Albanian that have been living outside and been experiencing what means saying that I'm an Albanian, and seeing how that has changed in my lifetime, from being very seen in a different way, and now in recent 5 years seen in a totally different way, I think that integration is possible because it's related very much obviously on processes and reforms and conditions, but also on the imaginary, the whole European community, or larger even, let's say, the populist dynamics will be having or have about Albania. It's about also that political element, and it seems feasible now. That imaginary, it exists now, so it looks quite feasible. But in terms of ambitions, if I have to connect back to what I've said in terms of participative processes, I think that there we should have the ambition of even giving an example of what can be done, and entering with that kind of example of radically open and important participative process in the EU. And that should not be for us kind of an EU path, but things that we want to do in this country because they are feasible, and because the people of this country can be part of these processes and can embrace and have also the knowledge, and we have seen also are eager to be part of it.
Yeah, very interesting. And maybe I would like to build on what both of you are saying and pose a broader question also. I think what we see in the West, in Italy, in the Netherlands, where we are from, but especially also in the US, is with the rise of the far right, there is also an increasing distrust of contemporary architecture and what it does and what it means and what it proposes. And I'm wondering, yeah, based on what you're saying, as Albania is about maybe to further integrate within the West, would you, yeah, what are your reflections on that? Would you think that this might impose a danger also for, let's say, the thriving contemporary architecture culture that is emerging in Albania? What are your thoughts on that? To all of you, basically. But yeah, I'm interested to hear from the different geographies what you think. Maybe from the US first. I'm not sure.
Sure.
You want?
No, please.
I am not very good at that. I always like to claim that New York is not the US. So, you know, I have to get out of that statement. I think it's very complex what's going on in the US, only because it's such a big country. It's a continent, really. So what is happening is that the government does certain things, but then actually sometimes it improves what happens on local levels because there is this very strong protective counter-reaction. So in the US, the president has, obviously in this case especially, a vast and sometimes devastating presence. But the actual governance lies by the governors and the mayors. So it is hard to, it's a very complex system, so it's hard. And there's also no government influence from in any possible case, not protective, not subsidy-wise in construction. The only thing they kind of subsidize is highways and bridges and whatever. Even the railway is private. So it's really in a weird way there. I mean, if you talk about democracy and your fake democracy, which I really like that term, I don't think we have in the government no democracy. In the states we have sort of a democracy, and the cities can be good and can be bad. So there was no answer there, but like, that is it's very 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 vast and all over the place.
But you're not saying it's like threatening contemporary architecture culture at this stage? Or,
At this point, only the investment, because people don't
Yeah.
want to invest because the market is up and down like a yo-yo.
Right, and what are your responses to that?
It's a really interesting question, how political positioning has an impact on art and architecture. Certainly, usually when more socialist regimes are in control, you have more funds going into things like the arts. Music, architecture falls as an adjacency to that. And then when you have more right wing, you generally have more pullback and more nationalistic pride, which is not going to be as beautifully oriented necessarily. But having said that, I tend to see politics as more on a continuum that's a circle or a sphere. That when you go very, very far left, you can end up very, very far right. And if you're not careful. And the same thing, when you go very, very far right, you can end up very, very far left. Most of the dictatorial regimes that we've seen around the world have started out as social communist approaches to governance. And I do believe that it does have an impact on the fear basis of how we tend to think in society. And fear changes innovation. The one thing that's going to kill innovation is fear. It's instantaneous, and it's very easy to get people afraid of something, whether it's government or control mechanisms or being jailed. And I mean, I've heard horror stories about what happened in Albania during, until 1988 or 1991, 92 timeframe. But at the same time, I also believe that what comes down to ambition is usually an individualistic pursuit. That ambition, if you have it, if you believe something, if you can conceive it, then you can actually achieve it. If you think you can, or you think you can't, you will be right. So just because you might find yourself in a more strict environment, a government regime that's more controlling and gives less investment, doesn't mean that you cannot get the projects done you want to get done. It really comes down to your own personal willpower. I've seen situations where all the world and all the possible elements that could be aligned against something getting done actually gets done because of your real leadership and because they were able to convey the future in a way that people could picture. They could speak in pictures. They were leaders that had a way to bring and engage people's hearts and minds into the dialogue. And I think no matter what the circumstance is governmentally, that you as individuals can be the architect of your own future and the master of your fate and the captain of your own soul.
Thank you. Yeah. Pier, would you like to respond as well?
Well, I don't think we should turn this into a plain political discussion. I also don't feel qualified to address that, at least in this context. But there are certainly certain political conditions that are required for doing architecture. And we can discuss if this is a goal for a society in general. Maybe sometimes also not. But But these political condition for doing architecture, this political desire of doing architecture was present in Albania in these last 20 years. It's also understandable because on the level of building institutions, Albania is in a condition that is different from Western Europe. So in Albania in the late 90s, to a certain extent, you could say that all institutions had to be rebuilt. And this desire of giving a stable form to institution and to build what was missing rather obviously turn into architecture. You can understand architecture as a sort of exoskeleton of institution that protects certain practices to happen in society. And this wish was there. We've all been here because this wish was here and not in other places. That's why it's so attractive for foreign architects, this place. And we all tried to do that. And of course it was difficult because most of the time we were trying to do public architecture with forcing in private money one way or another. So not always it worked. But the fact that there was this wish was amazing. And it was in my relatively relevant personal career, that has been the only place I met where this desire was there, which is something, I think.
Yeah, I think it obviously will have an impact in the sense that what kind of role architecture plays in the society. So power and regime will always have a close affinity with architecture and architects, I think, but on the nature of power will change also unfortunately, but the role of the architecture in the society. For example, I was thinking of the example of Paris, a certain party in charge of the city of Paris will support certain architectural projects that are more social, that are more participative, that are more inclusive, let's say, and another will go for a totally another approach. So it will play out more on what architecture does, what kind of an actor architecture becomes, what kind of a social and cultural actor, and for sure will have an impact on that.
Yeah, but do you think there are certain political developments are necessary in Albania for the future wishes that you expressed before to become a reality?
I think we are in the perfect political conditions for those wishes. So that's the right time, and I'm saying that because it's because I've been closely collaborating with the Prime Minister since long years. That's why. So I know what we have been projecting at the beginning. I mean, now things have evolved, but
so we seize the opportunity. You mean
exactly? Yeah. And the Prime Minister now is elected with an immense trust from Albanian people. Not all of them understand what's happening with architecture, but they have trusted him. And so this trust has to be given back to them with openness and explanations. And he has been showing that he knows perfectly to give that trust back, and have been saying that. So we are in the perfect conditions, I would say.
Perfect, yeah.
Let's end on this note, and we'll continue after a few things that will happen. We will have some closing words. Maybe we can open it up also a little bit. And we have the Prime Minister still with us, and we'll be inviting him. But before we get there, we have another video message, again from Portugal. You can probably guess. Eduardo Souto de Moura is joining us in this short video. After that, after that I will introduce the following performance.
And a big applause for our guest as well. Thank you so much.
Hey, Tirana. Perciadece Mitch. Bene, io non parlo, vado a parlare italiano, che è più facile per me. Come si è visto, non è facile parlare la lingua di Albania. Si dice Albania o Albania?
Albania.
Albania. Sì. Prima cosa è dire che mi dispiace che non posso andare a questo convegno di architetti, non solo per gli architetti, ma trovo degli amici. Ma devo pensare che tutti i medici mi dicono che non devo viaggiare di aereo, devo restare calmo, respiro male, non interessa. Bene, mi piace Albania, ho stato lì, mi è piaciuto molto, la gente e il territorio. E ho lavorato in un progetto lì di una grande responsabilità, nel senso che la gente è disponibile, anche il territorio. Oggi in Europa e nei paesi più sviluppati non è facile costruire, sono pieni di regole, lo spazio è carissimo, chiuso, piccolissimo, i programmi sono grandi. Lavorare in architettura è difficile, lavorare in Europa è più difficile ancora, in Portogallo è metà metà. In Albalia ho trovato una cosa, una geografia disponibile, perché ha volontà, territorio libero e pezzo soldi, perché mi hanno pagato bene. Allora queste tre condizioni provoca una speranza. C'è un libro in italiano che si chiama Speranza progettuale di Maldonado. Questo sono delle condizioni bravi per fare dei progetti. Io ho fatto uno, si è passato bene, mi è piaciuto molto, sono visitato Tirana, sono stato con la gente che mi ha aiutato, architetti, politici. C'è un stadio i paesi d'Europa sono preoccupati con la crisi, la guerra, così. In Tirana c'è questo posto di una certa gioia di vivere, perché c'è una luce al fine del tunnel. Non so se sia stato il comunismo che ha aperto le rideau e entra la luce, ma ho notato questo. Allora è un paese con volontà di fare, e questo è molto bello. Allora è una doppia responsabilità, si deve fare bene, che non è facile. E responsabilità perché? Perché è un'opportunità di non fare gli stessi errori che gli altri hanno fatto, anche noi, prima l'Europa, dopo il Portogallo. Allora è un momento di riflessione, è un'opportunità unica, con questa geografia bellissima, con questi soldi, questa responsabilità tecnica, di fare un frammento del futuro. E lì è una maquetta per un progetto globale, e questo è molto bello, vedo una anima ottimista, e penso che se continuiamo così andiamo a fare e dare delle lezioni, esempi per gli altri. Grazie.
It was a beautiful last message of hope, but also, again, a call for taking responsibility. I want to invite Robert Bisha on stage. And then, oh, there you are. Wonderful, joining us again. And I will give the microphone to you. You will be introducing our final performance.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. This ancestral song I've chosen for you today is a part of our polyphonic musical heritage and has been recognized by UNESCO. Our tradition is among the richest form of polyphony in the Mediterranean area. The song is called Legend of the Bridge, and it wishes to be a gentle embrace for this beautiful day, for this beautiful festival. Thank you for listening. Enjoy.
So thank you, Robert, and all the singers for once again opening your heart and letting us listen and feel the culture. This is the end of this fantastic day. It's been truly exciting. It's been a roller coaster ride. Thank you for sticking around. In a way, this was also maybe a rehearsal in building an architectural culture and also testing this space potentially maybe for a place that can maybe be there continuously, where we can still have these kinds of gatherings, keep each other updated on what you're working on, have this exchange between generations, between people coming from afar and people being active here on the ground. We're not gonna draw any conclusions, but we're just gonna maybe drop a few final notes here for all of us to chew on and to bring forward into the future. René, maybe you want to kick off?
Sure, yeah. So thank you so much for all your input over this wonderful day. Really inspiring in many different ways. For me personally, what I really take away from this day is also the urgency of expanding on architecture education in Albania. So in a way that it is rooted in the territory, but also in a way that it is learning from all this wave of contemporary architecture that has emerged in Albania over the last decades. And maybe it should take this kind of groundedness as a kind of point of departure. To create new methodologies that are specific for Albania and for Tirana, and something that can be crafted together by a new generation of students. And maybe in that sense would also like to reiterate some of the characteristics that were mentioned by Stefano Boeri earlier. Like maybe it should be public and for all ages and open 24/7 as a place for learning and to continue to imagine the spatial future of Albania. Thank you.
So Katia, what are you taking away from this?
I think we heard a lot about the different rhythms that are involved in this very fast transformation that Albania has gone through in terms of architecture, and people responding to that. So some quotes of today: time is not a delay, but a necessary condition of thoughtful design. Acknowledging Albania as a palimpsest of fragments of time. Time to learn from the land, from people, nature, sounds, witnessing the transformation. The kitchen is fast, but the table is slow. But also the importance of the interval that was just mentioned. I'm also a musician, so I'm interested in that. So the interval is something to digest what came before, but also to anticipate how we want to move into the future, which hopefully this is an interval that we created today, and hopefully this interval will come back as well. So maybe going back to the beginning of the day, taking the time to listen to the past, which involves the question of heritage as well. And finally, time to listen to the voices of a young generation. And maybe that beautiful performance just now, the question of polyphony. How can we create a really polyphonic architecture culture for Albania?
Mark, some final thoughts?
I think I already shared a couple of takeaways after the previous round, but one thing, kind of a synthesis of different things I've heard, is that maybe Tirana and maybe this very stage could be a good location, or perhaps the best location for international architecture discourse, because here discourse is also very much reality, right, and not just theory. The second one is take responsibility to create public space. And the third one is create a prize for the best client.
Thank you. This is where it ends for us. I want to thank you for trusting us with guiding you through this day and weaving all these different stories together. I hope the weaving will continue. Looking forward to meeting you at the bar in a few minutes. But before we go there, I would like to give the word to Adelaida Roca, who is the General Director of the Territorial Development Agency. And maybe you can also give her an applause, because I think she's been crucial for this whole gathering. Yeah.
Dear friends and visionaries, it's impossible really for me to express emotions I felt all day today long. What prevails is maybe pride and responsibility. Responsibility between a big size from all of you today here. Tonight, as we close this day of the first edition of Bread and Heart Festival, which hopefully for all of us, not only for me, will become an annual tradition, I want to say thank you. Thank you to every architect, which for me is every brave creative mind who has traveled until here today, to Albania, to be part of something that grows bigger and bigger, making me and my team both excited but much more scared somehow. What we are doing here is not just about building spaces or designs. It's about living with future now together. Our deepest gratitude goes to our Prime Minister Rama for guiding us in this path of pride, responsibility, and courage. But a special thank you should go to Adelina, which, with all my heart, I could say the tireless force who made this happen, not only with professionalism, but with full of heart. Now, before we part for the evening, I remind to all the Arch Army members that your dinner awaits at the only king palace in Europe where no king ever slept. So prepare to not sleep and be sure that we have prepared a spot from where you can all watch the stars the whole night, with a free dinner, of course. Once again, thank you to all of you, and as our Prime Minister says, the best is yet to come. Thank you.